here's here's Norm instead.
Hey, that's right. And along for the ride this morning is good friend Seth Rennie, and we'll chat a little bit about Seth here in a little bit. And of course, at the helm of this ship is producer Brian. Hey, our first guest this morning is Tom Gamboa, and Tom, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Norm. It's a beautiful day here in Palm Springs, California on a Sunday, and as usual, I enjoy talking to you.
Tom, this is your fifth or sixth time on the show. We love having you on and chatting baseball with you. And today I want to kind of hit on, of course, obviously now everybody has heard that the Chicago Cubs have won the World Series. They have broken the curse. And I want to talk about your time with the Cubs, and let's talk about, the city and Wrigley and the fans. And so that's the kind of angle I want to go with a little bit today.
Okay, sounds good.
And you were with the Cubs. You were their first base coach 1998 and 1999?
Yeah, I was with the Cubs for 5 years.
Okay.
95, 6, and 7 as the field coordinator and director of instruction, running the major league camp in spring training, and then running the minor league farm system during the season. And then 98 and 99, I was the third base coach in Chicago. And I got to tell you that, gosh, of the 11 teams I worked for over 44 years, that was the best job that I ever had in baseball by far. For the electricity and the nostalgia that you feel working in Wrigley Field on a daily basis and playing 64 of our 81 games in the daytime at 120. It was a terrific experience because it was like having your cake and eating it too. You were in certainly one of the top 3 premier sports cities in the country, and yet getting to live a normal lifestyle, because by 5 o'clock I'd be walking out of the ballpark at night, and then you got a chance to enjoy all the restaurants and the night living in the great city of Chicago. So it was, I wish it would have lasted longer, but I'm glad after 108 years that the spell is over and they're no longer the lovable losers.
And so where were you for Game 7? And then we'll talk about the emotion following.
Yeah. Well, I live on a golf course at a private country club here in Rancho Mirage, and I have an outdoor living room in my backyard. And the weather's been so spectacular here. I had friends over and just watching on my backyard TV, having a few beers, and to be totally honest with you, I was pulling for the Cubs, but I had mixed feelings because any manager or coach gets very attached to their players, and I had Corey Kluber. Most baseball fans don't realize that Corey was signed as our 4th round draft choice out of Stetson University by the San Diego Padres when I was working there. So as field coordinator, I had Corey both in rookie ball and at Lake Elsinore. And after our regime was over, the subsequent regime traded him to Cleveland, where he's become a once-over and maybe within the next couple of weeks a second-time Cy Young winner. So I obviously wanted to see him do well, which he did in winning the first 2 starts. And then I had Mike Napoli. I managed him at the AA level in my tenure with the Angels, where he led the Texas League in home runs and RBIs. And since leaving the Angels, he's been into the World Series with Texas, Boston, and now with Cleveland, which shows he might be the single best clubhouse guy that all the players gravitate to, and his leadership qualities. And to this day, I can't believe that the Angels virtually gave him away, because when you look at what's happened with his career, I think they regret that move. So I wanted those 2 guys to be successful, but in my heart, I was pulling for the Cubs, to win. And I'm really glad they did.
I had the Cubs going 7, And I'll tell you, the Cleveland Indians, they're a lovable team as well, and all for the same reasons. Napoli is, like I said, probably the best clubhouse guy in baseball, and there's a lot of there's so much respect, and there's even a little bit of fear in it as well. Some of the younger guys, and Corey, man, we caught him when he was with Eugene, and they're in the Padre organization, and then on to Lake Elsinore. And then, of course, you got Francona, and I'll tell you what, he is one of the best managers in the game today.
Oh, no question. No question. He's done series where it was a shame that somebody had to lose, because
absolutely,
you could tell you could see the leadership of both managers, that both teams totally left everything on the field, and the teamwork and the camaraderie, the picking one another up. I'm glad that it just did so much for baseball. I think the only thing for me personally as a traditionalist that tarnished the series is the fact that all 7 games went over 4 hours, which is ridiculous for a 9-inning game. And for people on the East Coast, the time of the games and knowing people had to work again the next day, you wonder how many people just taped it on the DVR to pick it up again the next day for the fact that it just went on so long.
And it was heavily viewed. I mean, it was one of the more viewed World Series in history. And yeah, even with the start times in the 4 hours, it still received that. And I'm glad that it's only a 7-game series, because I was drained after that 7-game series. Especially Game 7. I mean, have you ever seen a game like that? Here it is, 4 errors, 26 hits, so playing wise, it wasn't a very pretty game, but
no,
it was one of the greatest games I've ever seen.
Yeah. And to me, it reflected that it was just destiny for the Cubs to win, because they made so many mistakes in the game, and yet, and then certainly the game-tying home run that caught everybody by surprise, that Davis hit off Chapman, and being played in Cleveland, you assumed, oh my God, the momentum's gone. Yep. They're not going to be able to overcome this, and yet, after the rain delay, they put not 1 but 2 runs on the board that they desperately needed, because, as we know, Cleveland scored a run in the bottom of the 10th. So it just seemed destiny. In fact, one of my proteges, so to speak, Gary Jones, is the third base coach for the Cubs, and I told him in spring training, I said, Jonesy, you ought to keep a journal this year. And he said, why? And I said, well, you ought to just keep a daily journal, because your team is going to win it all this year. It's just the talent and the youth of getting as far as you did a year ago. Now the seeds have been sown that I think it's going to happen this year. And the first person that gets a ghostwriter to write a book about winning the World Series with all these millions of Cubs fans, it'll be a phenomenal bestseller. And he was like, do you really think we're going to win? And I said, yeah, I think you guys are going to be the new Braves of being in the playoffs the next 14, 15 years in a row, because the talent level is so good. They can't do anything but keep getting better.
Oh, yeah.
And then certainly when they got Chapman, if there was a weak link, it was the bullpen, and getting Chapman pushed it over the edge, just as Cleveland acquiring Andrew Miller. And and so it happened, and I'm thrilled for him, because in my short tenure with the Cubs in '98, we made the playoffs, and although we got swept by the Braves, we tied the Giants to get in the playoffs, and had a 1-game, fortunately winning the coin flip. We played San Francisco at Wrigley, and getting a chance to see the city be captivated by an opportunity to just get in the playoffs. In fact, it was to that point in time, the bars and restaurants did their highest one-day total in receipts in the history of Chicago because nobody wanted to be at home, and Wrigley only held 38,000, so people flooded all the bars and restaurants to be with other people watching us. If I remember right, I think we beat the Giants 6-2. I know Traxel pitched the game of his life, and that got us into the playoffs. And so I was reminiscing on that, and now here it's not just the playoffs, it's the World Series. To think the city had to be in total pandemonium and probably will be all winter.
Oh yeah. And it was like Brian, Brian early on, we had a friend of mine who's a big Cubs fan, lives in Chicago, and went to 3 of the World Series games and witnessed a parade. And, this is great for baseball. But, at some point here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get tired of hearing about the Cubs, the Cubs fans this and Cubs fans this. And, I'll tell you what, I think the one great thing about this whole World Series that makes it different from others is I know of a ton of people who normally don't watch the game, watch the series, that watched it. Yeah. And for people like Seth here, who is just now starting to kind of get the feeling of the game and stuff like that, and you told me, Seth, that you were rooting for the Cubs. And, if you become a Cubs fan through this, it's all right. But, it's bringing more people back to baseball.
Mm-hmm. I think this series could be what, restarts the Great American Baseball movie trend again. This was such a crazy, exciting series to watch. I can't imagine them not making some kind of a movie out of it at some point.
Oh, there has to be. Yeah, there has to be. And
yeah, I agree. I saw in our newspaper here in Palm Springs that the Sunday night game, which I believe was Game 5, there was an article that for the first time in 20 years, the World Series game doubled the TV viewership of Sunday night football game. Wow. I don't follow football, but I guess there was a big game of whoever was playing on Sunday night, and baseball doubled it. And I think I agree with both of you guys that when you look at a year ago, the country got captivated with the Royals winning the World Series because there was a losing franchise, not near to the extent of the Cubs. But everybody loves the Rocky, the guy that's not expected to win. And the Royals did it a year ago, and now you got the Cubs after 108 years doing it this year. So there's a great shot in the arm for baseball, and hopefully acquiring new fans and more passionate fans.
They do need to do something about the time, the length of the game. No, 4 hours. Holy cow!
Well, and even I was noticing when I looked at the clock at the end of Game 7, it was after 10 o'clock. I was going, oh my gosh, it's after 1 a.m. for everybody back east now.
Yeah. And so,
I know I'm in the minority, but I've spent my life in the game, and I'm a traditionalist, and I'm probably the only person that is against the advent of instant replay from the very beginning, because I've always felt that that there is a human element in the game in any kind of officiating, and I thought it lends to great barroom discussions and arguments over missed calls in important games, but the flow of the game continues, and now where we wait 5 minutes to see in New York, if it's beyond conclusive, it interrupts the flow of the game, and to me, it's the major ingredient that's causing these games that should go 2:45 to be going 4 hours.
Right. Yeah, so is there, I'm sure that there's a couple of people, when the Cubs won the World Series, that you flash back to your time with the Cubs. And, I'm sure that you had quite a few fans that you had chatted with about, winning the series and in their lifetime. And do you have a story like that you can share with us?
Well, just I live right near Wrigley, so I literally walk to the ballpark, and my hangout after the games was to have a couple beers with the fans at Bernie's, which is a popular sports bar right across the street from the park down in the left field corner. And being a Californian, I never knew about all this. I had heard about the phrase "the lovable losers," but people would come up to me telling me that their grandparents and their great grandparents, these stories about hoping to live long enough to see the Cubs win. I didn't really realize the full impact of it, but in my tenure there, you certainly felt it every day, and that's why I think it is such a great sports city. Is that through all the years of losing, virtually each and every day there would be 38,000 people in that ballpark pulling for the Cubs, even though the Braves were in the middle of their dynasty and we'd be lucky to win one of the three when we played them. They always had this positive demeanor that, hey, we're going to get them today. We're going to get them today. And it was relentless. And I certainly admired their passion. They were very, very supportive of us, even through the, like I say, in '98 we made the playoffs, although we finished 13 games behind the Astros, who won the division. And then, unfortunately, in '99 we finished last, and we all got fired. So I saw the highs and the lows in 2 consecutive years.
What is it like? Talk about the Wrigley experience. So here you got one of the oldest ballparks, next to Fenway Park, 2 oldest ballparks in America, in major leagues. You hear of, some players don't like Wrigley. Clubhouses are kind of funky and old, and but talk a little bit about the Wrigley experience, about coaching third base on the field.
Well, it was terrific, and fortunately, I had managed many years in Puerto Rico that prepared me for it, because the intensity and the passion of the fans. There's nothing you can experience in the minor leagues in terms of the winning and losing that prepares you for the pressure of coaching or playing in the big leagues in cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, or Boston or New York. But when you've been to Latin America and had experienced the passion of those fans and how much they want to win, it does prepare you and thicken your skin, to be able to focus on your job. But certainly Wrigley, if I remember right, I think it opened in 1916. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate enough that Billy Williams was my locker mate in the clubhouse, and also my seatmate on the planes. And so I would hear a lot of Billy, who I watched play when I was in high school when he was a star. I heard stories from Billy about those years. And Ron Santo, who did the radio broadcast as the color man, he sat right behind Billy and I. So I got an earful from those two about the nostalgia and the days and the losing and how they almost came close in '69, I believe it was, until they had a real bad September. And Ron Santo, believe me, I thought about him each and every game of the 7 I was watching, wishing he was still alive, because Ronnie was such a passionate, vocal guy about the Cubs. I can still hear his voice when we were fighting to get in the playoffs in late September of '98, and we had a game locked up against the Brewers with 2 outs in the 9th and the bases loaded, and Brant Brown, just unfortunately dropped a fly ball and left with everybody running on a 3-2 pitch, and we lost the game. And in hearing the recreation of the broadcast, Chip Carey was the announcer, but in the background you could hear Ron Santo go, "Oh no, oh no!" And I said to Ronnie on the plane, "My God, it sounded like somebody died." And he said, "They did. It was me dying." As that game got away, I mean, you could hear the passion in Santo's voice, and unfortunately, he never lived long enough to see it come into fruition. And of course, then you got Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. Yep. I was fortunate to play in a celebrity golf tournament and got to play literally with Ernie. And, Ernie had to be in his 60s, maybe even 70 at the time, and he was still talking about let's play two, that eternal optimistic I think any Cub fan thinks about the Sanos and the Banks and the Williams and the Fergie Jenkins, that it never happened in their tenure, and those are Hall of Fame players. That,
right.
But at least now it finally happened for the franchise, and certainly all the adulation that's going to Theo Epstein and his staff, and the incredible job that Joe Madden and his coaching staff did to build that camaraderie and togetherness, and teach the patience to not get down, being down 3-1 against a great ball club. They kept coming back and coming back. All those people deserve all the accolades they're getting, and as a baseball fan and a former Cub, it was thrilling to watch.
So Vegas has them at 3-1 odds to win it all again next year. Already.
I didn't know we're already talking about next year.
I know, right?
I can see it. I know. I saw Joe Madden in one of his interviews, and he was not bragging. As a matter of fact, he was saying, "Hey, we're only going to get better."
Oh, absolutely.
With Bryant and Baez and Schwarber and Addison Russell, all these guys being 23, 24. I think most of their team is under 26, which means that these players are still in the process of developing.
Well,
so they really can't do anything but get better, and that's why I was telling Gary Jones, in my opinion, I think this is a beginning of an Atlanta Braves dynasty where they made the playoffs 14 years in a row.
Right.
Now once you get into the playoffs in a 3 of 5 or a 4 of 7, the hot hand could, if I remember right, I think the Braves only won one
World Series
in those 14 years. But being there and having an opportunity, I think for Cub fans, this is the beginning of a dynasty in terms of at least being at the dance every year with an opportunity to win.
I look at, certain at-bats, like Baez, and not necessarily Schwarber, but, especially Baez. There'd be times to where he'd be swinging for the hips, and he's going to get better at recognizing pitches and as he goes on. And I mean, you're going to see a different ball player next year with him. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens with the Cubs. And I think you're right. I think you're going to have a new dynasty at least for a couple of years, and maybe even a little bit longer.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to watch the Cubs, certainly, because they're going to be right there. Now that they've got experience under their belt and a championship, they've got and coming back from 3-1. They've experienced adversity. They won 103 games, and they're going to be a tough team to beat going down the road. That's for sure. And
even though their minor league system isn't one of the top 5 anymore, they've got some young guys coming up to fill holes.
Oh, okay. Well. Now that's foreign to me. I'm not up to speed on their farm system, but my God, to acquire these players that they've acquired. You wonder how they ever got an Addison Russell from the Oakland A's,
right?
And I'm assuming Baez is homegrown, but I don't know. I know Bryant was homegrown.
Baez was homegrown.
Yeah, and Schwarber was a top pick.
Rizzo came from was it the Red Sox?
From San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
By way of the Red Sox, yeah. Right. You wonder how a guy like that got traded twice early in his career, but once again, a great job by the Brain Trust of Chicago to put this whole thing together.
So now Seth is trying to figure out a team to follow in Major League Baseball. Do you have any advice for him to help him find his team?
To find a team?
Yeah, to find a team to follow.
You know what? I really don't, because with me it was just kind of innate. I mean, growing up in Los Angeles when the Dodgers moved there in '58.
You're a Dodger fan, yeah.
I just immediately became a Dodger fan, and some of my best friends they immediately sided with the Angels as an expansion team. To me, it's just it's been an innate thing with me. And then, like I said, of all the of all the teams I worked for in baseball, there was just a specialness with the Cubs, and I really enjoyed working for Andy MacPhail and his regime, and just that whole experience in Wrigley was something I knew I'd never forget, and I just wish it could have been a longer ride.
Right.
Because and so I've stayed of all the teams that I've been with, I've stayed in watching Cub box scores, even though it's been 17 years since I left there. There is a specialness about it, and I'm sure that people that have worked for the Yankees and the Red Sox feel the same way about their teams, because those parks have the same kind of passion and nostalgia that Wrigley does.
Absolutely. Once again, Mr. Tom Gamboa here on Clubhouse Chatter. Tom, hey, it's always a pleasure to have you come on the show and talk baseball with us, and you're definitely one of my favorites. And and I'll close with this. The World Series this year, like I said, it was probably one of the best World Series that I've ever seen, and I've seen a few. Game 7 was one of the best, and in the end, when the Cubs won it all, I shed a few tears, and I'm not a Cubs fan. I'm a baseball fan. For me, what this means for the game of baseball is huge, because now you got people like Seth who never really watched baseball, is watching baseball a little bit more, and so now you're bringing on new fans, and that's important because we need to grow. Not only here in the States, we need to grow it globally, and so. Hey, you got the WBC coming up in the spring, and what can you give us a little bit of an update on Team Israel?
Yeah, just that'll kind of be my swan song in baseball. I was fortunate by Jerry Weinstein, the manager of Team Israel, to be one of his bench coach in that, and. As you mentioned about expanding baseball worldwide, this is certainly Major League Baseball's attempt, kind of copying off the World Cup soccer, to create this World Baseball Classic. And, by winning a qualifying round, Israel qualified for the first time ever to actually get into the WBC. And so I'm told that somewhere in the first week of March, we'll be going to Phoenix to practice for a few days and I guess play maybe a couple minor league teams to get some game experience. And then the tournament is actually a 4-day event, March 7th to 10th, at 4 different sites. Ours will be in Seoul, Korea, where we'll play against Chinese Taipei, South Korea, and the Netherlands. And the winners of each of those 4 will move on to Japan for the quarterfinals, and then the semifinals and finals will be at Dodger Stadium the last 10 days of March, just before the big league season starts.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, so it'll be it'll give me my baseball fix and something to look forward to. And I've never been to Korea, so it should be culturally just a great experience to go there, and hopefully we can compete and try to pull a surprise and win again.
I've chatted with a couple of players who have played over in Korea, and it's crazy. It's crazy. So, of course, playing in Japan is that way as well. But you came up through Puerto Rico and managed in Puerto Rico, so you already know about how passionate fans get about their countries and stuff. So, well, we'll definitely be following that. Of course, got a little bit of stake with Team Israel. Having interviewed a couple of guys, and we'll definitely be pulling for you guys, and can't wait. Hopefully we see you guys at Dodger Stadium. It's a tall order, but
a tall order, but miracles do happen.
That's right. Hey, Tom, thanks for coming on, and we'll do this again soon.
Hey, I enjoyed it, and I'm happy to push my tea time back an hour anytime to talk baseball.
Hey, I appreciate it. All right, okay. Tom, you have a good day.
Enjoyed it. You too.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Once again, Mr. Tom Gamboa on Clubhouse Chatter. So there, Seth, you talked about, your family, being Dodger fans. Maybe that's the way you go.
Yeah, my grandfather was a lifelong Dodgers fan, and so I've always had a soft spot for that team and always cheer for them. And living here in the Portland area, our closest team is the Mariners, and so I follow them and just trying to figure out exactly who's going to be like my number one.
So once again, Seth Rennie. So Seth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am.
I put him on the spot here.
Where to even start? I'm just kind of getting into sports and trying to figure that out. I've been a theater person my entire life. I started acting when I was in 3rd grade, and that's been really where I put all of my time and energy into. And so I'm just trying to go into adulthood and kind of broaden my horizons and learn how to, interact with other human beings and
Sportsing with Seth. Sportsing with Seth. And so it's pretty comical. He's on Twitter. Where can we find you on Twitter?
That's a great question. I believe it's just my name, @Seth Rennie.
And so, Seth will be watching, different games and stuff like that, and he comes up with just some crazy question about like the color combination or,
exactly.
Or why is there so many pitchers being used, and it just...
That was a question I had throughout this entire World Series, was how many pitchers does each team have and what happens if they run out? Because they were going through them like crazy.
Right. Usually a team will carry, it depends. Playoffs a little bit different. So they have a roster of 25.
Okay.
And so they'll usually, 10, 11 pitchers. Sometimes they'll carry 12. Usually 5 of them are starters, and then they'll have 6 relievers. And so to answer your question, sometimes in blowouts, so like if the Cubs are beating the Royals 12-0, one of the two teams might throw in a position player to pitch.
Okay.
And so sometimes they'll have a first baseman who pitched in college that doesn't pitch in the so they'll give him trash time, is what it's garbage time, and so he'll get an inning. And this World Series was different because some of the relievers were seen, like Chapman there in Game 7 ran out of gas because they overused it. Mm-hmm. And so these relievers are used to going 1 or 2 innings, usually 1.
So when you were watching the World Series and they were pulling them out, were you yelling at the TV like, get him out sooner, or, oh my God, what are you doing? Leave him in.
I've learned, I try not to second guess the managers because that's why they're in that position. Mm-hmm. I'm not being paid to manage a ball club, and for a good reason, But, Joe Madden and Terry Francona, that's why they get paid the big bucks on managing the teams. So they're the guys, and plus they've got pitching coaches, they got bench coaches, guys who have managing experience, helping them out coaching as well. And so I try not, you do a little bit, but, they look at the different things going on in the game, left-handed batter, right-handed batter, what kind of stats and whatnot. And, you might have, Brian Erickson hits the hell off of Seth Rennie, but yet Brian Erickson can't hit crap off of me, and so they might bring me just to face him.
Yeah.
And then bring you in after. But it's, that's what I love about baseball. Is, baseball, people tend to look at the game and say, oh my God, it's a boring sport. But there's games within games. There's managers trying to out-manage everybody. The catcher's looking at the batter's feet and figuring out what kind of pitch they want to throw to them and where, the location. Then you got the pitcher against the hitter. Now you got the infielders trying to shade to where they think the batter's going to hit the ball, and same thing with the outfielders. So there's so many games going within the game itself. And so for me, baseball is a thinking man's game. And it takes a pretty heady person to kind of understand the game. And so it's a complicated game. It's a really complicated game, And so, you've got the sabermetrics guys are coming in and they're doing everything off of numbers and stats instead of like the old school guys like Tom does it by eyesight. Like, oh my gosh, Seth Rennie is a 5-tool guy. And so you got Brian, who's a sabermetrics guy, is looking at your numbers from years past. And so,
Quick little chime in here.
absolutely.
FP Santangelo,
Yes.
he tweeted out, so how does the Hayward speech figure into sabermetrics?
That's a good question.
Just thought I'd pass that along. It's a different story, I know. We can go on forever about that. But
I love Hayward, and Hayward has struggled hitting, and I watching him. So he got hit in the face a couple years ago, shattered his jaw. So that's
Saw
why
people
he
with
wears why he wears that deal. I think that has a lot to do with his struggles right now. And for me, with viewing him, and of course I'm not a hitting expert, but I just see what I see. He's readjusting his grip, while the pitcher's going through his motion a little bit, and so that's why I think he's struggling. Unfortunately, the guy that I think could have helped him out, Charlie Lau Jr., has passed away a couple of Fridays ago, and so as much as this pains me, I'm not necessarily. I like the Dodgers. I grew up a Dodgers fan, but I work for the Giants, so I'm a Giants fan. Dodgers and Giants don't like each other.
Yeah, I've heard that. I have some Giant fan friends that yell at me anytime I say anything nice about the Dodgers.
If that's the route you go because of the family, that's what a lot of people do.
Well, and I think I'm one of the maybe it's a new breed of sports fan in that I don't know that I necessarily need one specific team.
Right.
I kind of like the idea of being like, well, I have like 4 that I follow, and if any of them win, I'll be happy.
Right.
But that might be because, I wasn't born in Chicago and a lifelong Cubs fan.
let's just make Seth's life easier and give him a Yankees cap, and life is good.
Well, see, and the funny thing is, most of on the same side that grandfather was, my uncle and all of his kids are huge Yankees fans.
There we go.
And so I've always been the one being like, so go Mets, yeah.
All right. So here's how you go about it. So you think of all the local guys that are playing baseball. So now you got Scott Brocious, who's bumping up to be a coach with the Seattle Mariners.
Who was a former Yankee, so we can get the Yankee thing there.
Absolutely. And then you got Craig Sitton, who's also with the Seattle Mariners, pitched as high as AAA. So there you got the Mariners. I can't think of anybody else local-wise.
Patterson,
Patterson's not playing anymore, though.
but he was in the Diamondbacks.
Diamondbacks, Giants, Royals, a couple other teams.
So we're narrowing it down still. We're down to 6.
It's so hard for me to say just follow the Giants and go to Salem Kaiser games with us, and you'll become a Giants fan.
Well, and that's a possibility because volcanoes.
But I became so I've always been like a Dodgers fan, a Braves fan, became a D-backs fan because I worked for them. And then I became a Giants fan because I actually got to go out to dinner with the Davenports. And they, talking history, baseball history. Big time, and the Yankees, same thing. You got the history. The most ever World Series titles belong to the Yankees. 27, 28 now, I think.
Yeah,
and
right
counting.
on there.
I mean, historically, the Yankees, if you want to go historically, the Yankees are the way to go because they have the most. And
unless you like the underdog,
if you like the underdog, then you got to kind of go with the Mariners because they've never been to a World Series.
Or you're the Cubs, and now you have to start and find a new team.
You find a new team.
How are those Indians?
I'm also the worst kind of sports fan because I'm watching this and I'm cheering the Cubs the entire way and they win, and then I'm going, oh, I feel bad for the other guys.
Yeah. Once again, Seth Rennie, and we'll chat a little bit more about what Seth does here and after the next show. And so, hey, we got Lenny Randall coming on. Lenny's going to talk about his time with the Cubs and who else knows what else Lenny will talk about. Lenny is a hoot. You don't want to miss the most interesting man in baseball. That's Brian. I'm Norm. Seth. Hey, we are sponsored by Baseballisms.com. If you like my shirt or my hat, Baseballisms.com. Baseball dudes. Hey, curveball there. Baseballdudes.com. To be the best, you must train like the best. Chris Gazelle up there in Vancouver, Washington. Mitch Canham, Based by Pros, building an athlete sports education. And by his dad, Mark Canham, MDM Design. Mark does our Clubhouse Chatter shirts for us. And check him out. We stream live every week on yamhilltoday.com. Hey, if you want to ask a question, give me some positive, negative feedback, or sponsor show, shoot me an email, normbo18@gmail.com. If you say I suck, I'm just going to delete your email. And you can find us on Clubhouse Chatter 1T on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, MLB.com, blogs. Hey, we'll be back at 10:30 with the always entertaining Lindy Randall.